I traveled to the end of the world. And if you ever wanted to travel to Antarctica, or if you plan to travel to Antarctica in the near future, then this 3-part video series is going to be for you. In part 1 of the video series, which is this video, I'm going to explain who I traveled with, how much I paid to travel to Antarctica, and what my experience was like traveling from North America to the end of the world, which is Ushuaia, Argentina, and then eventually from Ushuaia, Argentina, getting on our luxury cruise liner that took us to Antarctica. In the second video, I'm going to explain the services that I experienced while on the luxury cruise liner. And in the third video, I'm going to explain the day-to-day details of what I actually did while on the luxury cruise liner in Antarctica. So again, if you ever wanted to go to Antarctica, or if you plan on going to Antarctica in the future, there's definitely going to be things that you want to listen for and take away as you plan for your dream vacation to Antarctica. Traveling with Rhodes Scholar. One of my closest friends who accompanied me on the adventure had Antarctica as one of his lifelong travel destination desires. To fulfill his dream, all he needed was time, money, and a friend who also had time and money, but who was also daring enough to travel to the end of the world with him. With me, he checked all the boxes. There are many ways to travel to Antarctica, but ultimately, we chose a group travel expedition with Rhodes Scholar. If you don't know who or what Rhodes Scholar is, you're probably not alone. Rhodes Scholar markets itself to senior citizens over the age of 50, but as far as I know, does not restrict people under the age of 50 from joining their adventures. Trust me, I'm not 50 years old, at least not yet. Rhodes Scholar's core mission is to provide travel opportunities for passionate, lifelong learners. So this is what attracted me to them, because I definitely identify as a passionate, lifelong learner. If you do as well, you should check out Rhodes Scholar. I learned about Rhodes Scholar when I was a member of Rotary International, which is an international service organization who also typically have members who are older than 50 years old. Don't ask me why, but I guess I just gravitate towards an older and wiser crowd. Anyway, one of the Rotary members brought one of the Rhodes Scholars' travel brochures or catalogs to an early morning meeting one day. And as the meeting went on, I read through the brochure and I became amazed at all the locations that Rhodes Scholar have educational tours all over the world. I was immediately hooked, especially when I saw that most of all of their tours are all-inclusive, meaning that the meals and the lodgings are included in the price. I immediately joined the Rhodes Scholar mailing list, and this was in 2013. Unfortunately, I never took the chance to go on one of their adventures, but I always got excited when I received one of their emails that talked about a new place that I would want to visit. So when my friend told me he wanted to go to Antarctica, Rhodes Scholar was top of mind. In fact, after a quick online comparison at all the different tour groups and prices offered for an adventure to Antarctica, Rhodes Scholar became a no-brainer. 10 years after getting their emails, I finally joined them on one of their many world traveling expeditions. The best of all, this adventure was one of their all-inclusive experiences, which was exciting for both me and my friend's budget. So, how much did we pay for our Antarctica excursion? We paid $10,999 per person, but like many of Rhodes Scholar's adventures, it included our flight costs from Miami to Ushuaia, Argentina. Now, that price also included our 3 nights of hotel stays, meals, excursions, and all transportation while we were on land in Argentina. And that price included the cost of our all-inclusive 10-day transit from Argentina to Antarctica on a luxury and modern cruise ship. On a cruise liner, the only thing we had to pay for was alcohol and the internet. Our Rhodes Scholar package also included the price of the tips that our adventure leader paid to restaurant staff and ship's crew. But if you're like me, you'll still end up providing tips of your own, which would add to your total cost. Speaking of total cost, I probably spent another couple grand on preparation for our adventure. My $11,000 price tag didn't cover my $360 round trip flight from Atlanta to Miami on Delta Airlines. So obviously, different flights from different parts of the world will add to your total bill. Also, the price we paid Rhodes Scholar didn't include the roughly $1,500 spent on all the necessary cold weather gear for the adventure and other random purchases that you had to make for the adventure. So, what other stuff that we need to buy? Luckily, in the information package that Rhodes Scholar gave to us, it provided a list of recommended items to bring. So my first round of extra purchases was based on the items I didn't have that were on that list. Later, about 2 weeks before our adventure leader, Nicole, made a wonderful unpacking video for us that showed us exactly what she brings when she takes the adventure. So it was extremely helpful in nudging me to get a few extra last items. So what do you bring on your Antarctica excursion? Some of the things that I brought to prepare for my adventure to Antarctica and that was recommended by our adventure leader included waterproof gloves, a ski mask, outdoor ski goggles, cargo pants, hoodies, non-slip comfortable slippers to walk around the ship, a hiking backpack, binoculars for animal watching, thermal underwear, polarized sunglasses, which are definitely recommended because of the glare that bounces off the Antarctica white snow, a heavy downfield jacket, waterproof pants, which were actually required by the ship, thermal hiking socks, and I believe that's about it for the things that I know you need to bring. So the ship provided snow boots and parkas at no cost to us. All I know is I spared no expenses during this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experience Antarctica with one of my closest friends, because I knew I was only going to be doing it once in my lifetime. So all in all, I'd say I spent around $15,000, but I'm glad I spent the money. And I'm glad I toured with Road Scholar. How did Road Scholar treat us? Road Scholar took great care of us from start to finish. We never had an unanswered question. We never had to worry about how we would get from one destination to the next. If you want to see the itinerary for my specific trip, I will add a copy of my exact detailed Antarctica information package in the description section of this video. Now, keep in mind, however, that if you choose this same adventure using Road Scholar, prices and your itinerary may be different. Because the tip of Argentina and Antarctica's weather is so hit or miss, each day is subject to change and will determine what you may or may not do. Traveling from Miami, Florida to Ushuaia, Argentina. There aren't many disadvantages for booking an all-inclusive excursion. The more that's included, the less you need to worry about. However, the inability to book my preferred airline, Delta Airlines, to fly 9 hours to Argentina was one disadvantage of accepting an all-inclusive adventure, at least for me. My fear was that I would end up in the middle seat in between strangers with very little leg room on a 9-hour flight to Argentina. Road Scholar booked us on coach on Argentina Airlines when I usually fly business class or higher when booking my own flight. I called Road Scholar to ask if I could upgrade my seat, but because of the type of ticket they purchased for us, it wasn't possible. And I also couldn't upgrade through Argentina Airlines because my ticket was purchased as part of a group package. I momentarily thought to cancel my Argentina Airlines flight just so I could book my own flight on Delta Airlines, but I was traveling with a friend who didn't mind the flight we had. And Road Scholar wouldn't have refunded any amount I paid towards the flight they had purchased for me. And they told me if I booked my own flight, I would be fully responsible for getting to my final destination, which meant I would have to forego both bus trips from the 2 airports we landed at. So they kind of twisted my arm and I settled with the ticket that they gave me. Now obviously, if you don't have a problem flying coach, then this is not a problem for you. Luckily, about 30 days prior to our flight, Argentina Airlines gave us online access to move our seats within our assigned class. They didn't send an email to let us know. I just constantly checked and eventually found out that moving our seats was possible by going online and putting in my travel information. So in the end, my friend and I moved our seats so we could at least sit next to each other. And I didn't end up sitting in the middle seat in coach for a 9-hour flight like I feared. To be honest, it still wasn't the most comfortable flight. The first flight, Miami to Buenos Aires. On the airplane, there was no Wi-Fi, no chargers for my electronic devices, and not as much legroom as I would have liked for someone of my height, which is 5 feet 11 inches. If I remember correctly, I believe Argentina Airlines served 2 meals and a snack, but I slept through some of the food services and I didn't eat anything. I had laced myself with Advil PM so I wouldn't have to be awake the entire time. Eventually, after a long 9-hour flight, we landed safely in Buenos Aires, which in the end is the only thing that truly matters, right? So after taxiing and disembarking from the airplane, we went through customs, which also wasn't a very pleasant experience. The custom agent was very stern, as if he was trying to intimidate visitors to the country, but obviously who you get will determine how you experience Antarctica when you first land. I just ignored them, smiled, and complied with his questions. Eventually, I made it through customs, retrieved my bags, and met Nicole, our Rhodes Scholar guide or trip leader, and some of the other scholars for the first time. We all gathered at a meeting spot outside of security. We had to take a connecting bus from the first airport we landed at in Buenos Aires to another airport in another part of Buenos Aires. This was so that we could take a final flight to Ushuaia, the southernmost city in South America, and where we would meet our cruise ship. But instead of going directly from one airport to the next, Rhodes Scholar chartered us on a 45-minute bus ride to stay at a hotel for the night. During the bus ride, we learned a bit of education from the secondary tour guide that I believe also works with Rhodes Scholar. He taught us about Argentina's history and the inflation crisis that the country was and is currently facing. After making it to the hotel, we had a buffet-style dinner and then had a chance to sleep, which gave us an opportunity to refresh from our earlier lengthy flight. So folks in our group had been traveling for more than a day because they came directly from places further northwest in the United States like Minnesota and California. In the morning, we had breakfast, which was pretty much a buffet choice of the standard American breakfast that included cereal, pastries, eggs, bacon, and coffee. After breakfast, we took our next charter ride, about 15 minutes, to the next airport to board our final flight to Ushuaia. The airport was about 4 miles from our hotel. Now, the second flight, from Buenos Aires to Ushuaia. Getting through the line at the next airport was a controlled madhouse. There was one crowd of people, and we were all corralled like sheep in between two security barrier lines. The lines eventually split into 4 different lines, which finally guided us through metal detectors. Eventually, we made it through security and we found our gate. This flight's amenities were objectively worse than the first flight from Miami. On this 3-hour flight, there were only 2 passenger classes. There was first class and everybody else class. Again, no amenities were available, not even a phone charger, not even in first class. And my seat on this airplane probably had less legroom than my previous flight. But like before, I did get a chance to select my seat and we made it safely to Ushuaia, and that's all that mattered. Making it to Ushuaia, day 1. We eventually made it to and out of the doors of the small airport where we were greeted by a wonderful skyline of mountains. We were also greeted by a cold chill, a strong wind, and a chartered bus that took us to the most southern city of the world, better known in Ushuaia as El Fin del Mundo. Shortly after landing in Ushuaia, we were shuttled to our hotel where we would be spending the next 2 nights. During our bus ride, we were greeted by a vast skyline of mountains on our approximately 30-minute ride into town. Now, the houses I saw were probably no larger than 1,000 square feet and looked mostly like the standard Latin American city homes you'd find in other parts of South America. The streets were narrow and there wasn't much traffic on the road in this small city. Eventually, we made it to our hotel. Check-in was a breeze. Again, this was thanks to Nicole, our Rhodes Scholar adventure leader. After checking in and during the evening, we spent time getting acquainted with other Rhodes Scholars during an official program orientation. Afterwards, we walked to a local restaurant for dinner where we had beef and mashed potatoes with bacon bits, and I got my taste of Cape Horn, a local Argentinian IPA beer. After dinner, my buddy and I hung out at the restaurant bar for a bit to talk to a few locals so we could learn more about the town. The first thing that struck me as odd while in Ushuaia was the sun was still out around 10 p.m. Finally, my friend and I walked back to our hotel room after a bit of a struggle to find it and prepared for our next day's excursion. Making it to Ushuaia, day 2. The next morning, breakfast was buffet style at the hotel. Again, breakfast was no different than what you'll find in a typical American hotel breakfast bar. After breakfast, we took another chartered bus. But this time, we went on an expert-led field adventure to Parque Nacional Tierra del Fuego, a national park about 7.5 miles west of Ushuaia. We drove and then we stopped at a few different locations within the park to give people the opportunity to bird watch or whatever other things that they do. We had a chance to walk the trails, take pictures, or just enjoy the radically changing Ushuaia weather. We saw birds, greenery, and wild horses and all other things. but the weather was the craziest. One moment it would rain and the next it would snow, and then later the sun would shine so bright that it forced us to take off our coats. After the national park visit, we ate lunch at a local restaurant where we ordered from a select menu. The menu included fried mozzarella, an appetizer, and a seafood ravioli, which I ordered, but I didn't really like. I didn't really like the food at the restaurant, but the conversations we had were amazing. Our conversations included a diversity of topics, and each person had their own interesting opinions. But after lunch, late in the afternoon, we were given free time before we met up for our first lecture before our final dinner in Ushuaia. Most scholars use their free time to walk around town to find a local post office so they can send postcards to friends and family back home. Others went on a scavenger hunt for bargain prices at wine shops because apparently the wine was a great bargain there. But my friend and I walked around to people watching to take in the views of the little strange town and find a few gifts for family. In the evening before dinner, Nicole, our group leader, gave us a very informative pre-brief about Antarctica in the dining room of a nearby hotel. During the pre-brief, we were taught information about the early explorers of the region, animals we were likely to see in the region, and Antarctica's geographical characteristics. Most notably, I learned the main difference between Antarctica and the Arctic. If you didn't know, Antarctica is a continent of land overlaid by ice that is miles high in some areas, while the Arctic is a region of ice water that's surrounded by land. And I like the way Nicole said it. She said one is a bed of ice surrounded by land, while the other is a bed of ice that sits on a bed of land. After our lecture, we had one final opportunity to have dinner in a town at the end of the world. So my friend and I broke from the other Rhodes Scholars to look for an Argentinian steakhouse. Our meal was wonderful and the prices were reasonable. We had Argentinian beer, potatoes, and some desserts along with our steak. And at the exchange rate of 167 Argentinian pesos to $1, we only spent around $50 each, including our drinks. And before retiring for the night, we had a few more drinks. Then we pre-packed for the next day's hotel checkout. Finally, embarkation day. The morning of our embarkation, we had time to eat breakfast and walk around town a bit more. The ship wasn't ready to accept us until 1 p.m. local time. We could have waited in the hotel lobby, but my buddy and I ended up going to a coffee shop located in a small shopping mall. We stayed there until all the Rhodes Scholars met for lunch prior to us eventually going on the cruise ship. Once we were all ready, we all walked from the hotel to lunch, which was about a 15-minute walk. During our walk, one of the Rhodes Scholars took a tumble down while walking down the very steep and hilly streets, and luckily she ended up okay. And I say this just to say that in that small town, the roads and the streets were really steep, and you have to be careful walking in the town of Ushuaia. But once we got to lunch, we were served steak, but this time we had french fries and a few other appetizers. And after lunch, we all walked back to the hotel. Then we were all ready to go. Our next stop will get us one step closer to the reason we all took the adventure to Argentina in the first place, to get to Antarctica. We finally headed to the Ushuaia port to embark upon our cruise ship, Albatross's Expeditions MV Ocean Victory. And that's it for our travels from Miami to the time spent in Ushuaia. I hope you found this information very helpful. In the next video of this 3-part series, I'll talk about the amenities and services we experienced on a cruise ship. Was it amazing? Did it suck? Who knows? And in the last video, part 3, I'll do a walkthrough of what we did each day while on the ship, including our polar plunge. So, if you're also interested in hearing those stories, be sure to subscribe to my channel so you'll get a notification when those stories go live. Until next time, be safe and go travel. You have everywhere to go see.